The Help Show is a podcast dedicated to connecting individuals to mental health resources in the community. The Help Show is more than a podcast, it is a movement focused on change. Our objectives are to change the perception and stigma associated with mental health, encourage those with mental health disease to get help, foster access to mental health resources, and remove barriers to mental health resources, including those encountered in underserved communities. We remain committed to supporting the mental health needs of the community during the COVID-19 pandemic. Though the world has changed dramatically in a short period of time, The Help Show is here to help and navigate through the changes and address your mental health needs. Seek help when needed. If distress impacts your daily life for several days or weeks, talk to a clergy member, counselor, or doctor, or contact SAMHSA Helpline at 1-800-985-5990. The crisis worker will work to ensure that you feel safe and help identify options and information about mental health services in your area. Your call is confidential and free. Did you know, according to the TexasTribune.org, people of color made up 95% of Texas population growth, and the Hispanic and white populations are nearly equal size, but white voters will have disproportionate control of elections under the state's new political maps. According to the healthpeople.org, only 28% of Americans have worked with their fellow citizens to solve a community problem within the last 12 months. According to measureofamerica.org, the 2020 youth disconnection rate is 12.6%, which are between ages 16 to 24, and they're not working. Building better communities can sometimes be a challenging task. You have to implement healthcare rules and regulations that benefit us all, and cultivate relationships that can get the job done. It starts with the neighborhood involvement and business outreach. Each one of us has a prominent place in our neighborhoods, so let's start today and make some changes. My guest today is Jane Hope Hamilton, a candidate in the May 24th runoff primary for the Democratic nomination to succeed Eddie Bernice Johnson as representative to the U.S. Congress from Texas' 30th Congressional District. Jane Hamilton's resume shows deep connection to the Democratic politics in the state of Texas. She has served in the key staff and advisory positions for Texas House Representative Helen Giddens, for the U.S. former Congress Representative Martin Frost. She serves as both campaign manager and as chief of staff for the U.S. Congressman Mark Vetzi from Texas' 33rd District. As if that isn't enough, Jane somehow found time to serve on the boards of numerous civic and education organizations, including Annie's List, the Dallas County Election Advisory Council. Jane is the founder and current president of the Barbara Jordan Leadership Institute, an organization I especially want to ask about during this next hour. With more than 2 decades of experience in public policy, electoral politics, and community organizing, Jane Hamilton's entire career centers around progressive activism for the benefit of the underserved communities. She has been encouraged to run for Texas' 30th congressional seat by stellar cast of business, religious, and civic leaders, as well as the key elected officials and community organizers. Jane Hamilton, welcome to The Help Show. I'm honored to meet someone with such impressive credentials in both grassroots and institutional politics. Welcome to The Help Show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Thanks for being here. So I want to know, everyone wants to know, the listeners want to know, how did Jane Hamilton get involved in politics?
Wow. Well, I think like many of us, growing up, we observe things. And, when you're a youth, you have a lot of questions about your community and why things happen the way that they do.
Right.
And, I was that same young girl with many questions.
Okay.
And the more I learned in school about government and disenfranchised communities, the answer became very clear that the people that we elect to represent us have such a huge effect on our daily lives.
Absolutely.
And so I knew then at a pretty young age that I wanted to affect change.
Right.
For my family, for those in my community, for my loved ones, for my friends. And that's what got me interested in policymaking. But I didn't have a connection, right? I didn't have the family that was connected and that had the hookups and, get you an internship in such and such's office. So I had to find my own way. And the answer for me was electoral politics. That was my entryway into, meeting people who were elected officials.
Okay.
And that's how I got my start. I worked on a campaign, and as they say, the rest is history.
Oh, wow. So how do you connect building better communities with the life of politics?
Look, you can't have one without the other. Yeah. It's impossible. A lot of people, especially in marginalized communities, tend to say things like, I don't get into politics. Yeah. That's not something that I feel is for me.
Okay.
But the truth is, everyone is involved in politics. If you're a teacher, you're in politics.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? If you are a police officer or a firefighter, if you are a business owner, you don't ever get away from politics. And so my attitude has been, let's go straight to the source, right?
Absolutely.
And so building better communities has everything to do with politics, because in order to elect people who represent you, you have to vote, and that's politics. It's interconnected. They're very related in this country. We've got two paths to change.
Yeah.
We can either litigate, that's in a court of law, or we can legislate, and that's in the halls of power. And so the choice for my life and wanting to affect change and be a part of realizing that change, the path for me was clear.
Absolutely. So why is it important to have diverse landscape of assistance?
In what way?
Let me see.
Just from your perspective, like where I'm just curious as to, because that's a huge. There are a lot of different ways to answer that, but
okay, so answer it.
I feel like you have some context.
No,
for it.
no,
So
I'm just. No, come on, just answer it, please.
The landscape, and when you talk about the landscape, you mean a political landscape?
Yes.
And you mean in terms of adversity and opponents?
Correct.
Okay. I would say status quo has never benefited African Americans. And I'm someone who's never accepted the status quo. It started off from a young age, when your parents say, oh, it's just because I said so. I'm the child that's like, but why?
Absolutely.
And my why never ended, right? Mm-hmm. It carried me into adulthood. It is here today. The status quo for African Americans, feels like, it looks like, and it is, unfortunately, our reality of the fact that we deserve better, that our communities deserve better.
Absolutely.
We don't have to accept failed public schools that our tax dollars are paying for. We don't have to accept poor healthcare systems, lack of healthcare. Yeah. We don't have to accept police brutality. We don't have to accept things being the way they are. Mm-hmm. And so when you want to push against the status quo, you do have to stand up, and you have to be counted, and you have to make sure that your voice is heard, and you got to get in the game. You got to put some sweat equity. You got to put some skin in this, And as a people, I do think, and we're having a new generation, I think, of activism that is being sparked right now, but we can't forget where we came from, and we cannot forget how great and powerful and strong African Americans and Hispanics have been in the face of adversity, right? The people that have decided to stand up in the face of adversity are the ones that have carried us into freedom that we never thought we could have. The ability and the right to vote, for women, the right to choose and have reproductive freedom, right? And for people of color, the right to integrate our schools. Those are all things that had we not stood up in opposition to the status quo, we wouldn't have it today. And now we find ourselves fighting for some of these same rights all over again. In Texas, we're on the front lines of the battle. Every single thing that you could possibly think of, the fight is here in Texas. And so we are people that actually really need to stand up together as a collective and say that Texas is better than what we are sort of being, forced into, right? Texas is better than voter suppression. It is, absolutely. Right? We should all have a voice. We should all be able to cast a ballot. Texas is better than failing public schools and, not standing up and fighting for our children. Texas is better than having a governor who doesn't want to expand Medicaid. Yeah. But if we don't speak up as people in our communities, then our voices won't be heard. And so we have to stand up in the face of adversity.
Absolutely. And realize this is not acceptable.
It's not acceptable.
At all.
That's correct.
Yeah. So how do you feel about competing in a district that was held by an iconic Black woman?
Yes. It's really interesting, right? Because Eddie Bernice Johnson, she is iconic, right? She is the thing that is made of legends, right? She was the first African-American woman to serve as a member of Congress in this seat. I mean, as a matter of fact, the seat was drawn for her pretty much, right? And so this time right now, when we are in a runoff and we are, almost in early vote is May 16th through the 20th, and election day is May 24th. But in this place right now, this is history. Who is going to represent this congressional district, and what kind of standards should we hold them to? Should we, want them to have experience in Congress? Should we want them to have a track record of results? Mm-hmm. Should we want them to be someone of integrity? Absolutely. Should we want them to, be someone that has really shown and proved that they're a fighter, but not just a fighter that can deliver results? Absolutely. And I think the answer to all of those questions is yes. Mm-hmm. And I think that anyone who has decided to run for this seat, that's the floor, that's the bare minimum. And I'm just, blessed and proud to say that I have such a track record, and I've been here since 2000 on the ground, working in the community. A lot of people have said, how is it that I don't know you? But my work has never been about who knows me. Absolutely. We live in a time right now where politics has really turned into a celebrity culture, and it's unfortunate because branding is something that people pay for, but your body of work is your own, right? Yeah. And so we really have to get back to a place where we don't feel like the people that are elected leaders are celebrities, right? They're our partners. Absolutely. And that's, as voters, that's what we should require. I'm running against someone right now who doesn't have a district office. She's a first-term state rep. She's the only representative in North Texas that does not have a district office, never bothered opening one up. So I think that, people should take heed to that. Yeah. Accessibility is key. If you're seeing someone on TV a lot, but you can't necessarily reach them, I think that's a problem. So those are things that, when we talk about the Congresswoman that came before, there are a lot of things that I do believe have been done well. And there are also things that we need to improve upon. And I think accessibility, and for constituents to know where the office is, for constituents to understand that's their office. Absolutely. It's their tax dollars. Absolutely. And that the job of a member of Congress is to help inform their constituents about resources, federal government resources that are here for them. And it's also our job to serve as as electeds to serve as a partner to the constituent. And I very much look forward to being able to do that. I have a very clear vision of what service looks like and what it should feel like. And I don't see enough of it. And so I'm really excited to take my organizing background into a congressional office to serve the people.
Okay. So how do you plan to involve the next generation? Because you have this vision.
Yeah.
And the generation now is of very much of importance.
I do it now. I do it every single day. Whenever I have the opportunity to be in front of young people, I take it. Right now, today, this morning, I woke up, got the kids ready. They had a full day planned. And so they're out, playing and doing whatever else they're doing today. I left the house, and the first thing I did this morning is I met up with some young people who live in various communities, and we knocked on doors because it's important to involve young people, right? It's important to involve the generation and the next generation so that they understand what it means to really put democracy in action, right? And so my day started off with gathering some young people and knocking on doors and talking to voters and telling them what's on the line with this election. And then after I did that, I went to a luncheon put on by Ignite. And I sat with about 6 young women who are interested in politics, and I gave them the real deal. I said, listen, what you see on TV, it's not real. This is hard work, right? We talk about passing legislation, but there's also constituent casework, which is a daily, important part of the work that you have to do. And I, really advise to all of them, if you think you want to be in policy, if you feel like you want to be elected official one day, start on the ground. Start in a campaign, volunteer your time, knock on the door, call people. And then that way you get a first look at, is the candidate that I'm working for real? Are they going to keep their promises when you were knocking on those doors? And are they going to keep their promises to the voter, right? Are they going to be committed? And that's one thing that I have, right? I'm able to look at all of the people that I've ever worked for. And I have a real, clear, I'd say, front and center perspective and viewpoint of people who I've worked for that are the real deal, and those who, unfortunately, you can't say the same thing for everyone. But a part of the work that I do, someone referred to me as a political consultant. I've never thought of myself as a political consultant. Every single time I worked for any candidate, I had a conversation with them, right? With Craig Watkins, we talked about criminal justice reform. We talked about the Innocence Project. We talked about, exonerations. And I'm so proud to say that Craig Watkins, who's the first African-American district attorney in the state of Texas, we got him elected in 2006. I was 28 years old when I managed that campaign. That was 10 years before Black Lives Matter movement, right? So here in Dallas County, we have to recognize that we are trailblazers. Before people were, talking about these things, we were living out the problems of when you have a DA that's not serving your community. And so for us, getting Craig Watkins elected was criminal justice reform, and I'm so proud of him, and I'm proud to say that he exonerated 33 people while serving as DA, and that's huge. I had the opportunity of meeting one of them. His name is Christopher Scott, and he told me about what it was like in the jail when Craig Watkins won. I'd never heard that story. He said, you could hear people on the different floors and just cheering on because they felt like they had someone that was going to see them. They felt like they had a chance. And when Christopher explained that to me, it just made the work that I do sorry. Thank you.
So as you know, the Help Show podcast is focused on disseminating information about healthcare and other social services resources in the minority neighborhoods of Dallas. We've had several episodes discussing mental health resources. In particular, I was happy to see that your campaign website mentions needed mental health enhancements to government programs. Can you please elaborate on your vision for healthcare improvements, especially with respect to mental health?
Absolutely. You know, the way I look at mental health is healthcare. And I think we need to talk about mental health in the full holistic approach. Mental health is health. And a lot of times we separate it from healthcare, right? But if you're not mentally well, then you're not healthy.
Absolutely.
And so I think that's the first part of it, is for us to think about it in those terms. So, you know, if you look at statistics, people who are depressed are 2 to 3 times more likely to also be suffering a chronic physical ailment.
Okay.
Right?
Right.
So that tells us that there is a correlation, right, with your mental health and your physical health, right?
Absolutely.
And what we need to continue to address is making sure that people have health care.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Without health care, how do you take care of your mental health?
You can't.
What's the answer? You can't.
Yeah.
And so I was very proud as a chief of staff to Congressman VC to work with him on passing and making sure that the Affordable Care Act stayed in. Because, you know, one of the things that the other side of the aisle did every year is they kind of chipped away at the ACA program. But what we know is that when it was first signed, there was something like 16% of people who were, didn't have insurance, and now I think we brought that down to 9%. And so in 2020, so we're cutting down at those people who are uninsured, but we also think about those underinsured. And so in Texas, we have a lot of people that have insurance, but they're also underinsured. So we got a long way to go. This district and the adjoining district, Congressional 33, have some of the highest numbers in those who are uninsured. And we also have a governor who has not accepted federal funds to expand Medicaid. And so we just have to continue to fight for health care. Yeah. We also, especially in Black and brown communities, have to talk about mental wellness and mental health. And we can't make it something that we don't talk about. We can't make it taboo. We've got to normalize the conversation. We have to normalize the conversation in schools. We've got some of the highest rates that we've ever seen of young people committing suicide. Yeah. And so we have to have these conversations. We got to save our babies. We got to save our older people, and really that job is really dependent on what happens with healthcare in the United States. So there's a lot of work to be done.
Okay. So let me touch on another subject that is of special interest with the minority communities, that of criminal justice and policing reform. Can you elaborate on your vision for the reform needed in these areas? Specifically, how do you improve the system while balancing the need of social justice on one hand and neighborhood security on the other?
Right. Well, look, I mean, there's no question that our security is paramount. We need to be safe and secure in our homes and in our schools.
Absolutely.
Everyone deserves that and everyone needs that. And so we know that there is a place for policing, right?
Yes.
And we know that public safety is absolutely necessary. And so, with that in mind, we should also understand that they are here to protect and serve us.
Absolutely.
And that people who do not do that ought to be held accountable. So I think we need to do more in the way of community policing, having conversations around what that looks like, making sure that we feel safe in our homes, right? When we think about Botham Jean, who was such an amazing person, and the fact that We lost him much too soon. You know, his parents being in St. Lucia and, you know, sitting him here. He went to school in the States. He lived here in Dallas, worked for PricewaterhouseCoopers. I mean, you couldn't, you know, ask for more of a young African-American Black man. And the fact that his life was cut short is unfortunate, and it's sad. And as someone, myself, being the survivor of police brutality, I can speak firsthand what went wrong. You know, I can speak firsthand from experience. This is my lived experience. Having been pulled out of my car and dragged across the sidewalk and beaten and thrown in jail and charged with harassment of a public servant, which in Texas is a felony. How many people can afford to beat back that charge?
Absolutely, not me.
Right?
Yes.
How many people can afford over $20,000?
Yeah.
You know, it took me 2 years to fight that. How many people have the ability to do that?
Right.
That's what we have to make sure that, you know, we stand up against, that we speak out against.
Absolutely.
And that we hold elected officials accountable for their part in making sure that we don't have any more victims. And unfortunately, we see it every single day. So when we talk about criminal justice reform and we talk about police reform, we have to understand that it's affecting the daily lives of people that we know, people that we will never hear about it. We have to get from a place of where this is normalized. We've almost become desensitized.
Absolutely.
To the suffering of people in our community. And so, you know, I've talked to T-Hop, they call him in the Black Police Association, and he's one of those people that is constantly talking about this and bringing people into the studio to talk about these issues. And I'm thankful for that, because that's what it's gonna take. It's gonna take our police of color to be on the front lines of really correcting this relationship between our communities and the police. And I'd say also, you know, look, and I talked about this earlier, in Dallas, we're doing our work on this. We're on the front lines. You know, we are trailblazers when we talk about criminal justice reform. Having led the campaign in 2006 when we flipped the county and turned it from red to blue, from Republican to Democratic, and elected the first African-American district attorney in this state, was huge. You know, electing all of the African-American judges that came along with him on that ticket was huge when we talk about criminal justice reform, because this is what we know. Absolutely. When you go to court and you stand in front of one of those judges, they actually see you, right?
Yeah.
And we have to understand that when we don't vote, we cannot make a change in the courts. Absolutely. If you don't go vote, you can't make a change in the courts. So you and your community, I'm not into politics, I'm not into voting. Well, guess what? That means that if you have a chance to change that family court, if you have a chance to change that misdemeanor court, right? The chance you have is by going to vote.
Absolutely.
And if you decide to give up your constitutional right, then you're responsible for your own damage.
Absolutely.
Everybody has to take responsibility. As I run this race for Congress and I'm in this runoff, I had 5 people who had name recognition. I had none.
Yeah.
And I was up against $2.3 million that came in from a cryptocurrency billionaire, right?
Right.
And I'm just calling my friends, raising money, and the people I know through the state, right? Like, hey, I need some money, I need to walk, you know? But this is the thing. I'm gonna leave it all on the line, right?
Right.
And that's what we have to do as individuals. What are you doing to change your circumstance? I tell people all the time, I'm not running for Congress to tell you I have all the answers. I'm running for Congress to be a partner.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
So that the information that I have, you'll have.
Absolutely.
The work that I need to do, we'll do it together.
Absolutely.
The things that our community needs, we're gonna work on it together. Okay. And I always say that if you've gone through a problem, you know, I was once a single mother, and having been a single mother, I can tell you about healthcare needs and housing needs and childcare needs. Having been a survivor of police brutality, I can tell you every single thing that went wrong from A to Z, right? So when we look at the George Floyd Act that's in Congress that did not pass, I can say, I'm going to Congress because we gotta end chokeholds. We gotta ban that.
Absolutely.
Qualified immunity, no.
Yeah.
No knock warrants, gotta go.
Absolutely.
Right? You have to elect people that share your value system. And if you don't go vote, then you are as responsible as your oppressor.
Absolutely.
Point blank.
Point blank. We have 2 more minutes.
Full stop, end, and period.
Yeah, one more question.
That's 307.
Okay, one more question.
Sure.
Okay, so before November election, of course, the Democratic nomination for the 30th district will be decided by the primary to be held on May 24th.
Yes.
You've garnered the second highest number of voters in the regular primary, and now you're in second person runoff. Tell me what distinguishes your candidacy and your position from those of your runoff opponent. I noticed, for example, that you both claim Barbara Jordan as an inspiration, and you both list essentially the same priorities in your political visions for the future. How should the voters in the May 24th runoff choose between you?
You know, my grandmother used to always say, she called me Missy.
Okay.
Or she'd say, Jane Hope, you know.
Yeah.
Talk is cheap.
Huh.
And that's a distinguishment.
Yeah.
You know, talk is cheap.
Yeah.
And so I think that people who are gonna vote, you know, you don't need to look at who's endorsed us. And I mean, okay, you know, we can talk about that, right?
Yeah.
I've got some great endorsements like Ron Kirk, the first African-American mayor and ambassador, you know, Congressman Mark Vesey, Commissioner John Wiley Price, Diane Ragsdale, Wendy Davis, and I can go on and on.
Yeah.
These are people who've seen me do this work in the community since I was 21 years old. This is home. I'm dedicated. I'm committed. And the difference is that I have a record. So this race is coming down to my opponent's rhetoric versus my results.
Absolutely.
What are the fruits of your labor, right?
Yeah.
What have you done? What are your deliverables? I'm happy to talk about some of mine. We talked about 2006. We talk about criminal justice reform. We walked that out at the doors.
Yeah.
We were the change that we wanted to be. And at 28 years old, having such a huge responsibility, that wasn't easy, right? You're keeping people around you motivated, right? You gotta raise money for the ticket. You gotta keep the candidates motivated.
Absolutely.
And you have naysayers the whole time through, right? But we won. In 2008, when Wendy Davis ran against Kim Breimer in Tarrant County, people told her she couldn't win, but we won. In 2010, I managed the campaign of Clay Jenkins, and people said we couldn't win, and we won.
Absolutely.
In 2012, I managed the campaign of Congressman Vesey. People thought that, you know, there was no way he'd win, and we won. And most recently, I was the statewide director for President Biden during the presidential primary, and we all knew how that looked.
Yes, we do.
We had a lot of great candidates.
Yes.
And, you know, the road wasn't easy, right? I mean, we were right up against Super Tuesday, and we didn't know what was going to happen. Was Biden going to actually clinch the nomination? I put my head down, and I worked hard, you know, all across this state. And I do believe that hard work is really what it takes, right? You can't let people tell you what you can't do, what you're not going to do, because if you listen to them, then you do nothing.
At all.
And you have to understand that, and you gotta hold that to be as true as it is. So when we talk about distinguishing between candidates, we're talking about someone who's on TV, extremely celebrity driven, versus myself,
Absolutely.
whose name a lot of people didn't know before I got into this race. I had to take the time to educate the voter, to do all I can to say, this is me and this is my body of work. Having sued Greg Abbott twice in 2011 to protect our voting rights. And I won twice with 14 other plaintiffs, helping to work with those plaintiffs, helping to raise the money. Because we have to understand that the governor, right?
Yeah.
They use our tax dollars to disenfranchise us.
Absolutely.
But when you sue somebody, you gotta raise your own money to do it.
Yeah.
So I've got all kind of stats, I've got a record, and I'm proud of my work. And what I truly believe is this: I do the hard work and God provides the increase. And that's my life story.
Jane, please give us some words of encouragement.
Keep going. You know, keep going. And you don't always have to have the answers. You don't even have to know what the other side looks like, but you have to keep going, right? You can't stop, and you can't allow for doubt to take over, right? My middle name is Hope, but hope is active. You know, hope is nothing when you're not moving and when there's no action. Absolutely. And so that is what my driving force is. I do understand my purpose in this life is to help people, and I've been doing that for a very long time. I can't remember a time in my life when my life was not about helping people. And so I just tell people all the time, keep on pushing. Yeah. Keep going. Don't stop. Like Diddy used to say, can't stop, won't stop.
Take that. Well, I want to say thank you so much.
Thank you.
With interviewing with the Help Show. I'm for you.
Thank you.
Do it.
Yep.
Okay.
All right. I appreciate you. Watch your head.
Oh, give me it. Oh, give me it. The Help Show wants to thank all of our partners: Next Generation Action Network, Good Co-working, Auckland Research Associates, NJI Holding, and Taylor Penguin. We'd like to take a moment and thank everyone in our listening audience for listening today. We'd also like to remind everyone that we are a nonprofit organization operating entirely off the generous support of our donors. If you would like to give to our organization, we appreciate you. You can send your donation via Cash App, # The Help Show, or on our website at www.thehelpshow.org. There's no donation too small. Every dollar given will strengthen our efforts. If you'd like to donate $1,500 or more and become a VIP sponsor, then we have some additional packages listed on our website. And you can visit us at www.thehelpshow.org for more details.